I mean, you get nervous here and there when it's going, I don't want to say easy, but when the score is in your favor, it's like you have to be cautious, so a little bit nervous, but obviously I'm super happy to be here.
10,000 Filipino fans didn't come to Miami just to watch a tennis match. They came to be part of something bigger. And without ever picking up a racket, they did something no one in that stadium saw coming. Carolina Muchova had arrived at the Hard Rock Stadium grandstand court riding real momentum. She had just taken the Qatar Open title only weeks before Miami. On paper, she was the clear favorite. World number 14 facing world number 29. A seasoned champion going up against a young challenger. Precision and experience on one side, Filipino heart on the other. By the time it was over, Muchova had won 6-0, 6-2, in exactly 60 minutes. A scoreline that ruthless would normally drain the energy out of any crowd in the building. But this was not a normal crowd. What happened in those final moments? Muchova standing on court, racket in hand, surrounded by thousands of Filipino supporters who were heartbroken but still cheering, genuinely caught her off guard. She hadn't walked onto that court expecting to feel what she felt. And when she sat down for her post-match interview, she couldn't hold it back. Eala had lost the match. But her fans had won something else entirely: the room, the moment, and the respect of the woman who had just beaten her. If stories like this are what you're looking for, subscribe right now. We look for the angles other people walk past. So what exactly did 10,000 Filipino fans do that moved Muchova to tears? Let's begin with her own words, because what she said in that post-match interview, chosen carefully, spoken honestly, tells you everything about the kind of match she had just been through. It's honestly not that easy. Even when you keep winning points, you still have thoughts that you have to keep focused, keep pressuring the other player, and all that. Read that slowly and let it land. This is a woman who had just won 6-0, 6-2. She did not drop a single service game. She converted every break point she had, all 5 of them. She hit 20 winners against just 11 unforced errors. By any measure you apply, that was one of the sharpest and cleanest performances she had put together all season. And yet she's standing there telling the Tennis Channel interviewer that it wasn't easy. Why? Because of the stands. Because of what was happening in those stands from the very first ball to the very last. Here's the thing that sets this crowd apart from almost every other fan group in tennis today. Most partisan crowds, when their player gets bageled in 22 minutes, go quiet. They shift in their seats. They stare at the scoreboard with that specific look, the one that says this is going to be a long night. Not these fans. When Eala lost the first set 6-0, the Filipino supporters didn't flinch. When Muchova broke immediately in the second set and pushed ahead to a 4-0 lead, threatening a double bagel, which would have been Eala's first in 4 years, the chanting didn't stop. Laban Alex, fight Alex rang out again and again from stands packed with Philippine flags, fan club shirts, and supporters who had flown specifically to Miami to be inside that building. When Eala finally held serve to get on the board at 0-4 in the second set, she let out a roar. The crowd erupted with her. For a moment, the noise in that arena felt less like a reaction to one held service game and more like a celebration of something far greater, as if she had just lifted a Grand Slam trophy rather than simply avoided a complete shutout in a match she was clearly losing. That is the kind of energy those fans carried into the Hard Rock Stadium grandstand that evening. And Muchova felt every bit of it. She later admitted that even with the score firmly on her side, she had to keep pulling her focus back, reminding herself to stay sharp, to hold the pressure, to not let the atmosphere pull her out of her rhythm. A player of her standing, a 2023 French Open finalist, a 2-time US Open semifinalist, having to mentally manage crowd energy while winning by a wide margin says everything about the raw force those Filipino supporters brought into that building. To really understand why this moment landed the way it did for Muchova, you first need to understand who Eala actually is to the people of the Philippines, and what she means to an entire sporting community.
Star Eala takes center stage at the BNP Paribas Tennis Paradise in Indian Wells.
It's been packed for players like Eala, Joao Fonseca, seeing the Filipino fans, the Brazilian fans.
And why this crowd was never going to act like a typical tennis audience. Eala is 20 years old. She grew up in Quezon City, then moved to Spain at 13 to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy, spending years quietly developing her game while an entire nation waited and watched. The Philippines is a country where basketball and boxing own the sports conversation. Tennis was a side story. Tennis didn't make global stars. And then Eala happened at the 2025 Miami Open. She walked in as a wild card, ranked 140th in the world, and knocked out 3 Grand Slam champions. Jelena Ostapenko, Madison Keys, and Elina Svitolina, back-to-back in straight sets, reaching the semifinals as the first Filipino player in WTA 1000 history to go that far. That run didn't just move her up the rankings. It changed the way an entire country looked at the sport. By the time the 2026 Miami Open came around, Eala was sitting at number 29 in the world, a career high, and her fans had become something the WTA genuinely had no prior reference for. At the 2026 Australian Open just 2 months earlier, her court was packed beyond capacity, and hundreds of fans were turned away at the gate. Her opponent, Alicia Parks, openly admitted that the crowd had rattled her so badly in the first set that she lost it 6-0. Tennis forums, broadcast commentators, and fellow players all started reaching for the same description. The Filipino fans had turned neutral venues into home courts for Eala, wherever she played in the world. Miami was different only in scale. Hard Rock Stadium has the space for it. And the Filipino-American community in South Florida, one of the largest in the entire United States, showed up in numbers that made the whole evening feel less like a tennis match and more like a national occasion. Now here is where the story takes the specific turn that got to Muchova. Eala lost, and she lost badly. The Czech curse, that's what Philippine sports media had begun calling it, stretched to a brutal 0-13. 13 matches against Czech players since turning professional in 2020. 0 wins. Not one. And this wasn't a narrow defeat that could be explained away with a few unlucky moments. This was Muchova at her sharpest, the kind of performance where the difference in experience and tactical reading of the game was simply too wide to close on that particular night. Eala didn't look for cover afterward. In her post-match press conference, she was straightforward and composed. Asterisk, I definitely did not play my best, but that's also a big part because of how she played. There are some details I could have done better with. Asterisk, no mention of the injury wrap on her left thigh. No deflection. Just honest, clear-eyed reflection from a 20-year-old who had just been taken apart on the very court where she had made her name 12 months before. Then she spoke in Tagalog, directly to the fans watching back home. Asterisk, I remain happy and not disappointed. Thank you very much, fellow Filipinos. The fight continues and I hope to see you again in Europe. Asterisk, that message, delivered minutes after a 6-0, 6-2 loss, landed differently in those stands than you might expect. There was no booing. No visible frustration directed at Eala. Instead, the crowd responded with a long, sustained round of applause that reportedly continued well after she had already left the court. And that is the exact moment the story moved away from a match result and became something far more human. Muchova was still on court. She heard every second of it. Let's be clear here, because this story deserves accuracy over drama. Muchova did not collapse at the net in tears. What happened was quieter than that, and in many ways, more meaningful. In her on-court interview immediately after the match, she visibly struggled to put the experience into words. She described feeling nervous despite winning by a comfortable margin. She talked about how hard it was to stay locked in when the emotional atmosphere around her was that powerful. And when she turned to acknowledge the crowd, the Filipino fans who had just watched their player lose and were still there, still loud, still pouring everything they had into that building, something visibly shifted in her composure. This is a player who has shown her emotions on court before. At the 2025 US Open, Muchova became visibly emotional mid-match after spotting her ex-boyfriend in the crowd. She has never been someone who keeps those feelings buried. So when a crowd that wasn't cheering for her, a crowd that had just seen their player heavily defeated, still managed to move her to that kind of visible emotional response, it said something real about the kind of energy those supporters carry into a stadium. There is a particular kind of sportsmanship that sits above rivalry. Cheering your player through a punishing scoreline without turning ugly, without creating a hostile atmosphere, and then holding that support with dignity after the loss, that is genuinely rare in sports. Muchova recognized it in real time, and it got to her. What this moment points to goes well beyond one match. Eala is set to begin her clay season at the Linz Open in Austria from April 6th, a WTA 500 event and her first time competing at that level on clay. The ranking damage from Miami is real. She loses approximately 270 points and slides from number 29 toward the mid-40s, unable to defend the 390 points she earned from last year's semi-final run. But the cultural story is moving in the opposite direction entirely. The WTA officially launched the Philippine Women's Open in January 2026, the country's first WTA tournament, driven directly by the wave of interest that Eala created. Tickets to the final sold out before she had even confirmed she would be playing. Coco Gauff, who defeated Eala in Dubai earlier this year, addressed the pro-Eala crowd after their match and specifically acknowledged their presence. Opponents are taking notice. Tournament directors are taking notice. The WTA itself is taking notice. The 10,000 Filipino fans in Miami didn't just back their player through a loss. They showed one of the best players in the world what unconditional sporting loyalty actually looks like up close. Muchova won the match. The fans won something else entirely. And the Czech player standing on the other side of all that warmth and collective heartbreak couldn't pretend otherwise. Eala lost 60 minutes of tennis. But she left Miami carrying something that no ranking point can measure, proof that her fans have become a force the entire tennis world is now paying attention to. And that force made Muchova cry. That is exactly why moments like this are worth slowing down for. Because the scoreline only ever gives you half the story. If you want the other half every single week, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a video, and drop a comment below telling us, do you think will Eala finally break the Czech curse in 2026? We read every single one.